Okay, everyone, listen, welcome to another Microsoft 365 platform community call. Today is September the 20th, 2022. Vesta and David are in Orlando, so they left us here in charge. You know, we got to say Vesta is an extremely trustworthy person, but I'm going to do him justice by not blowing it up. So today you have myself, Fabian Williams, PM on the Microsoft Graph team, along with Brian Jackett, my colleague on the same team. Say hi, Brian. And today we welcome you to another call. We have a fantastic agenda here today for you. Of course, to the people who are joining new, because every month, we have new people joining. We're going to go through some updates and news on the Microsoft 365 platform. Then I am going to actually try to do the together mode picture here today. I already tested it. It worked once, so it should work again. We have two great demos here today from Adriana and Liam. They're going to be talking about the introduction to SharePoint Online Admin APIs on the Microsoft Graph, something near and dear to my heart because it has the words Microsoft and Graph in the same sentence. And we're also going to have Gary Trinder come and speak to us about getting started with the Microsoft Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio. Gary had a wonderful blog post, I think 2 weeks ago on the same topic. Happy to have Gary here to talk to us. But to help start us off, Brian, do you want to go ahead? Are you going to take control?
Yep, I'll take control over there. Thank you, Fabian. So as always, for folks who are new to our call or wanting to hear about what's the information kind of going on in the various blogosphere and so forth with Microsoft 365, we've got some great information to share with you. So as always, we'll start off with our quick little updates just on what's available from the platform. We do have two different community channels that you can take a look at out on YouTube. There's one for the M365 developer videos. This is a little bit more of the kind of formal training or other types of materials that are being published out there. There's also one for our community videos. So all of these community calls, whether it's here for the M365 platform, for the identity and for adaptive cards and so forth. We've got those out there as well. You can find them on the YouTube links for this. As well, all of the different things that we work on, these are in the open source. So if you're looking to contribute back, we would love to have your feedback in terms of documentation updates or issues or other types of things that you'd like to contribute into there. Lots of other ways you can be able to participate there. In addition, we've got a number of different sample galleries. There's a lot of different ways you can plug in, whether it's for Teams or for SharePoint, for Microsoft Graph, or list formatting and so forth. Lots of great ways you can take a look at, see those actual samples running in your own demo environment and being able to actually test them out as you see fit. But as always, there's lots of different links out here. I'd love to give you kind of that one-stop shop for all of them. And you can find that at the aka.ms/m365/community. You can find all the invites, the links to samples, all the different call meeting invites out there. Great way to actually plug in and see what's available out there. And speaking of community calls, we have a number of different calls that go on. This is our Microsoft 365 platform call. This is on a weekly basis on Tuesdays. We do have a number of other calls that go on as well. We are in discussions about potentially bringing some of those folks into the fold. So you may see some more topics ranging across different areas, whether it's for adaptive cards, whether it's for identity, for Office add-ins, Power Platform, and more. You can find all of these different calls and the invites for them at aka.ms/m365/calls. And if you're looking for how can I actually get plugged into the community and be able to actually start to develop things in my own environment, we've got two great things for you. First one, you can go to the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. As part of this, you actually get a free sandbox tenant that's going to have 25 E5 developer licenses. And with this, you can actually start to be able to use your own solutions. You can build things on top of this. You can actually go and see demo content that might be in there. This is a 90-day free trial, but as long as you continue to use that, that will self-renew out there. You can find more at aka.ms/m365/dev-program. And we also have a number of different kind of learning opportunities available to you. Part of our Microsoft Learn initiative. With this, there are a couple of dozen different modules out there. There are training paths or other types of free training available to you. You can find more at aka.ms/m365/dev/learn. Lots of great content out there. We'd love to see you participating in that. In terms of what's going on, kind of the latest and greatest in the community, we have two different podcasts that we want to make you aware of. The first one is the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast with our very own Jeremy Thake and our MVP, Paul Schaeflein. They'll do interviews, they'll do news, kind of covering what's latest and greatest out there in the community. You can see this in usually in a weekly or kind of monthly basis. Lots of great content out there, being able to kind of plug in with things. You can find more at m365devpodcast.com. And we also have our Microsoft 365 PnP Weekly. This is a great way for Vesa and Walduck to sit down with folks, whether they're inside Microsoft or external, kind of hear what things are going on, what are people building, hearing some of the insights of what they're doing when they're developing with Microsoft 365. Lots of great content. Again, another way to get plugged into the community. You can find the video for this, aka.ms/PnP Weekly, or the podcast at pnpweekly.podbean.com. And one more area, as I mentioned, with these samples, again, we've got a lot of different ways you can plug in with the M365 platform, whether it's for SharePoint Framework, whether it's for Microsoft Graph, Teams, and so forth. We have our community samples out there. These are things that have been developed by our community members. We really appreciate folks building these, sharing them out there so people can actually go and put them into their own dev tenants or otherwise. We're now over 1,100 samples that are out there and continuing to rise on this. You can find the new unified sample gallery over at aka.ms/m365/samples. Great way to actually go and see what's available out there. As you probably saw earlier this year, we crossed the 1,000 threshold. We'd love to see this continue to climb higher. Let's go for 1,200 as we're going forward in these coming months. And with that, I'll turn things over to Fabian again.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you very much. Should kick back to me right now. So I will not be able to do the radio voice as David. I cannot do that. I have the silly Jamaican accent and I speak extremely fast, so that's not going to help much. However, piggybacking on what Brian mentioned in terms of all of the samples and all of the other resources that are out there today, the Sharing is Caring initiative is really a great place to start. I wish when I actually started in my journey in M365 land, or back way back in SharePoint Dayland, we had something like this. But and we talked about safe space when we started the conversation. But basically, if you are either intimidated through GitHub, don't know how to do a fork, don't know how to do a pull request, don't know how to do commits, this is a great place to take some of that learnings that you have inside of these areas, whether it's GitHub, where it's the sample gallery, and actually do it in a place where you actually will have people come and join you. It is not recorded. It's basically a place for just open sharing and learning. One of the things to mention as well is that this week in Orlando, there will be a live Sharing is Caring event. It's done on a Wednesday. I am underway here just because the conference has started, but basically it'll be tomorrow where there will be a live event there. So if anyone is in Orlando, listen to this. I hope you had a great time in that event. If you are on your way to Orlando, I hope you have a great session as well. There's also from our dev advocates, Bob German, Robbie, and the rest of the team here. I actually participated a little bit of this, but this is a great tool in terms of the Microsoft Teams App Camp. If you are building solutions around Microsoft Teams, whether it is a team app that is by itself, it's something that you put in inside the store. This is a great journey. And the key thing here that when Bob told me about what they're actually going to be doing is the fact that many of our samples starts off with the beginning all the way to the end. Sometimes people bring their own solutions, or they have solutions that they want to take into M365. There's a two-prong approach here that allows you to take an app that you already have and then make that a Teams app. So the link here, ak.ms/app/camp, is a great way to start. And I've gone through some of these videos. It's a very good iterative guide in terms of a journey in terms of building a Microsoft Teams solution. Also, we're getting close to the end of the year, believe it or not. October is soon upon us, and Microsoft Ignite registration is now open at ignite.microsoft.com. This will be done both in person and also online. Some people will be there, at events and doing watch parties. I expect a lot from Microsoft Ignite. I encourage you to sign up and register. In terms of the news, yours truly is right on top. There's a new blog post out there where one of the partners that I work with on a regular basis actually used basically the app that they have out there called Priority Matrix, which is a task management tool. They actually added additional features around universal actions using adaptive cards, which allows actionable items from within the context of Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Outlook in order to action items. They've actually seen an uptick of 20% improvements while turning on this feature, and I blogged basically their journey in doing that. They also have a blog that's actually linked to mine as well, talking about how they use Microsoft Graph for more than what they do in terms of the app. Please check it out at your convenience. The next is language integration is now general available, GA'd, and available for you to do it. So basically consider that you have a meeting, you have a person like me speaking, and you're inside a place where there's multiple people in multiple different languages. There's features that's now GA'd to allow for people to consume information in their native language, which makes for a much better and inclusive experience. Mark Cashman actually has a blog out there as well, where I'm talking about the fact that HR Web, which we use here internally at Microsoft, is now running on SharePoint. So basically, using our own tooling. And it's a pleasant experience. I use it, almost every 2 weeks to find out what's going on relative to, things that need to be included on, whether it's healthcare or whether it's just putting in my time away for my upcoming trip to Germany at Cloud Summit. Bill Bear actually also has a blog out there that I want to call out, talking about what's new in SharePoint Server. So link into that here inside as well. Bill's all usually on stage talking about SharePoint Online, SharePoint Server. I miss those days where I usually see him pacing back and forth, but it's a great blog. Please do check it out. We're going to do picture time now. As I said, this is something that is brand new for me. I'm going to go ahead and drop us into together mode. We go ahead and start recording. So let's start the hand waving. Go ahead, hand wave, hand wave, hand wave. Vista is going to be so proud of this. All right, thank you, everyone. I am going to stop the recording there and get back out of together mode. All righty, it worked with a charm. So thanks, everyone, for that. I'm going to now introduce our first speaker, Adriana Wood and Liam Fernandez, to talk to us about Introduction to SharePoint Online Admin APIs on the Microsoft Graph. You guys are going to drive your own deck, so I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah, is that how we're doing it? Awesome.
Yep, that looks good.
All right.
All right, let me kick in. Should have like a sound while it's loading.
I know. We definitely need something as we transition over. I'll talk to Vesta about
transitions. Hi, everyone. So my name is Adriana Wood, and I am a product manager in OneDrive and SharePoint. I focus on security and compliance solutions as well as APIs. And with me today, we have...
Hi, I'm Liam Fernandez. I'm an engineer for the SharePoint admin platform team.
All right, and today, together, we are focusing on an intro to SharePoint Online Admin APIs, specifically the tenant settings API, which has been recently exposed in MS Graph beta. So what are we trying to do with this API? Well, we're calling it API modernization, which is essentially bringing the APIs into the common surface of MS Graph as a single scenario. So we are looking to standardize. This is more of an internal thing. We're looking to standardize a SharePoint API creation process, allow our app and App Plus user-based functionalities, and specifically for this audience, provide third-party developers a single API surface with a single auth token. As you know, historically, SharePoint has had many different types of APIs, from CSOM APIs to RESTful APIs, as well as some APIs that we have exposed in Graph, and that creates kind of a mesh of different authentication patterns. And of course, we're looking to support also our internal partners with an easy-to-use API set. And then as part of this greater goal is one endpoint per scenario. So when you see tenant settings API, you see in the next slide, that is actually a whole bunch of APIs, around 29 different APIs and growing. And of course, as part of exposing things into MS Graph, we have two other opportunities that open up, which is that we can accrue to the M365 PowerShell, and we can support the Microsoft CLI as needed. So that's kind of our high-level goals. Tenant settings API allows you to programmatically administer your SharePoint tenant. We have put in 2 key links. Again, we'll share this deck afterwards, so no need to memorize anything. But a link to our documentation, which is aka.ms tenant settings MS Graph, and a sample app, which is the app that Liam is going to be doing a demo with in a few minutes. And here's the list of the settings that are currently exposed. Again, no need to memorize anything because we are going to be sharing this, and it's all documented. So now for the most important part of today, which is the demo. It's always the most exciting thing. So Liam, let me know if you're ready and take it away.
Yep, I'm ready. I'll start sharing my screen.
Mm-hmm.
1 second. All right. So hi again, everyone. I'm excited to demo the first OneDrive and SharePoint Online Admin scenario that we've exposed through Microsoft Graph. We've exposed an endpoint with the ability to programmatically read and update tenant-wide settings that affect your OneDrive and SharePoint. I'll be using a custom application registered to my Contoso tenant to kind of show the functionality of this endpoint. This app relies on the Microsoft Graph admin SharePoint settings URL here. It's now in beta and publicly available. This application is pre-authorized with app-only permissions, so it may make requests without a signed-in user. And I want to show the audience, when you register an app within your Azure portal, you do have to go to the API permissions page and grant these new permissions that are protecting this API. They're called SharePoint Tenant Settings Read and SharePoint Tenant Settings Read Write.all. So I'll go ahead and show quickly how to find these. So you need this read.all in order to be able to just perform a get on the endpoint, and you need the read-write-all permissions in order to update these settings programmatically. So I'll go back to the application, and today I'll say I'm an administrator for our Contoso School of Electronics tenant. Developed this simple web app for my organization to have a portal to just read and manage these tenant settings. So as an administrator for our EDU tenant, we're ramping up the start of the school year, and we want educators such as Adriana to begin creating their classroom spaces as Teams sites. And I will go ahead and use this app to make the default site creation path /Teams. So I'm going to go ahead and perform a get here and show this result that the current site creation default managed path is sites. And I'm going to go ahead and update that setting. So I'll go under the property and change this to be Teams. And before I do that, I'm going to go to the SharePoint Admin Center for our Contoso Electronics tenant and show that the setting as of now is set for sites. And go back here and submit our patch request. And now here, as we can see, it has been changed to Teams. So now I'll switch back to Adriana and see if she can see this change.
All right. So as Liam mentioned, for the purposes of this demo, I am a teacher. So what I am going to be doing is I'm just going to go ahead and create a site. Just for purposes here, I'll just do Teams site, and then I do bio 101. And you can see here that the URL has been selected as a Teams URL, given Liam's change that he made. So as an end user, I don't have to worry about what URL I have to select. The admin has already managed it programmatically, and lucky for me, it is already been selected. So with that, we have shown you essentially what is the changes that need to be made. Well, first of all, getting the tenant settings, which was the first part of Liam's demo. Then secondly, taking one of the tenant settings and changing. We just used a trivial one for the purposes of this demo. And then what is the admin and end user experience once this tenant setting has been changed. So with that, let us know if there's any questions. Again, this is a journey. We are looking to expose a multitude of settings in the future, and with the angle that we're doing scenario-based exposure. So this one is around management of your tenants with future scenarios coming into MS Graph. So any questions, comments, concerns, I'll switch over to Teams and stop presenting over here. All right, so kind of looking at the chat. Okay, so let's kind of scroll back. And by the way, I don't know if audience participation is allowed here, or is this one of those meetings where people
it's fully allowed. They can come off and speak. There's a couple questions in there as well too, but different. We encourage people to come off and speak, raise hand feature if there's more than one talking over each other. But please let's give some feedback to what we've seen here today relative to the admin API. Do you guys see this as something that you have scenarios at work? Do you believe that this will take hours off things that you're already doing right now? What are your thoughts on it? Don't everyone put their hands up at once?
If no, we can go into the chat. I mean, there's quite a few comments, so glad to cover. And yes, clean demo. Thank you, Liam. Very cool app. And again, all that code is on GitHub. Too early this morning. GitHub for anybody to just download and use as a sample. Would like to use MS Graph to govern SharePoint sites. We cannot find a lot of information on it. So I'll link the resources. So we do have the MS Graph resource type. Look, a lot of times what has happened with some APIs is that they're still in beta. So when you go into MS Graph, I would start by toggle into beta. Let's look for the functionality that you want. Again, if there is no functionality present for a particular scenario, do reach out to us. I have in the deck that will share our aliases as well. And then, all right, fantastic. So yeah, you have a good breakdown of operations. So create site, restore site, lock site, read only. So these things are in consideration for further development. We're kind of staggering the bringing of this functionality. So great feedback on what you're liking to see in the future. Let's see. Why did MS only have 2 managed paths? Ideally, it is really to keep things fairly simple with sites and teams. That is just the reality, rather than having a tenant, especially as you change paths over time, you would get into a state where now your tenant has a whole bunch of paths that are a little bit harder to manage. So it's just a simplicity story. No particular deep hidden meaning behind it. And yeah, I think the rest of them are just some samples, some questions. Again, this is a first API. We would like to also thank, the tenant admin team. This is not just Liam and I. We get to be lucky today and present, but tenant admin team, the MS Graph team, who tirelessly reviewed our code to make sure that we would be following a clean and good pattern to use, and stay tuned for further updates. All right, any other questions, comments? Otherwise, we shall go into the next presenter. And again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Adriana, and thank you, Liam. So let me see. Ken says not site settings, but from admin perspective. Okay. All right. If that is it, I'm just, we can carry on the conversation in chat. Like to thank the presenters here today. Liam, as people are saying, listen, it is not often that, demos go this clean this early in the morning. So whatever sacrifices and offerings that you did to the demo gods, keep it up. We'll do it. Let's see if it favors fall to the bold with Gary Trina. Gary, you're up, baby.
Hey, Fabian. Yeah, seeing the comments about, demo is going really smoothly and then I'm following next is filling me with dread. So, yeah, thanks, Ralph, for that comment to start that off. It's, we'll see, but I'm going to blame you if it goes wrong. There we go. Right, okay. Cheers, Liam. Right, okay, so let's get the first things sorted, and that is to share my screen.
And Gary, just to let you know, they ended a little bit early, so you do have time, so you don't have to rush through your demo.
That's right. I can run at half speed. Perfect. Hopefully you can see my screen. Just to confirm.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Right. Okay. So let's get started then. So thanks everyone for jumping on today's call. So just to introduce myself, my name is Gary Trinder. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, mainly focused around Microsoft 365. In this case, it's going to be Microsoft Teams, and I'm here today to talk to you about Teams Toolkit, but Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio. We had a session last week from John Miller, who went through Teams Toolkit at the high level, and it was very much focused on Visual Studio Code. So there is a Visual Studio Code extension for Teams development, and there was lots of interest around what was coming with Visual Studio. So here we are. Based on that feedback, we're going to have a getting started session with basically, if you're new to Teams development or you're using Visual Studio, you're a C# developer, using .NET, then hopefully this is something that you've been looking for and will help you get started building apps for Microsoft Teams. So let's get started then. So Teams Toolkit is basically an add-on to Visual Studio that's going to add in new Microsoft Teams project templates, and it's going to extend Visual Studio Code with lots of features that's going to make it easier for you to launch your apps, to debug them, and also deploy them as well when you want to get them into Azure. So really, in short, Teams Toolkit is there to help you build Teams apps and fast. So what I'm going to show you today as well is it's all generally available. There's nothing preview in here. So Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio was actually released, made generally available in August of this year. So you may have missed it. You may have been on holiday at the time. It got released with the latest version of Visual Studio 2022, which is 17.3. So I'm going to show you that when we step through how you can install it, how you can create a project and get those apps running. So let's first start with how you can install the toolkit. So one of the things which threw me at first is it's not an extension. So what you actually need is you need the installer to modify your installation of Visual Studio. So download the installer, or if you've got it saved in your downloads somewhere, just launch that and hit modify, and you'll bring up the screens to be able to modify the workloads that you've got installed. And if you take a look under the ASP.NET and web development workload, you will see, if I just click that, down here we have the Microsoft Teams development tools. So basically, if you want to install them, check that box, hit modify, and that will install everything for you. I've actually pre-installed it, so it is still there. I don't actually want to remove it, so I'm gonna close this down right now. Otherwise, that demo is not going to go very well. So yeah, just come into here, tick the box, install it, and that will install Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio for you. Okay, so let's open Visual Studio. So we've got our welcome screen. What I'm just going to go through, step through now the project creation process. So let's create a new project. You'll find that you have under all platforms, you'll have a new option for Microsoft Teams. So let's select that. Only one option for the platform. So Microsoft Teams app. So we're going to select that. Click next, and then we've got our standard give your project a name. So let's call it community call, and I'm going to hit create. And now Teams Toolkit is kicked into action and provided us with a number of different options for different types of templates that we can select from to scaffold our Teams app. So we've got 4 high-level types of apps that we can create. We've got 2 bots. One, notification bot. So this is good for if you're wanting to react to external events in another system. You want to push a message into Teams, maybe with an adaptive card, get some kind of response back. Great place to start. So if you choose the notification bot, you do have further options. You can change the type of trigger that you use, and also what technologies are used in the implementation as well. So we have a HTTP trigger using the Web API server, and then we have a mix of HTTP trigger and timer triggers as well, but using Azure Functions as the in the implementation, and then a final option of both triggers together with Azure Functions. We've also got a command bot. So a command bot is kind of your, if you've been using bots, conversational bots where you have commands, commands that you can create, so that people who download the bot can interact with the features of that bot. This is a great way of getting started to be able to scaffold that app and create new commands and kind of step into those conversational type bots. Third, we've got a tab. Everyone knows what a tab is in Microsoft Teams, I suspect. So yeah, this is a tab project, which is really quite nice. We'll go and look into this actually. So this is using Blazor behind the scenes in its implementation. It's got some really cool features that the toolkit gives you, some interoperability between C# and the Teams JavaScript SDK as well. Really, really cool. We'll go look at that in a second. And finally, we've got message extension as well. So basically, if you want to extend that message box with different actions, you can use a message extension in here. Just want to point out that the 2 bots and the message extension do require ngrok to actually run them. That is a dependency at the moment. So you have to kind of set that up in the background and have that running to use the toolkit. If you're kind of thinking, oh no, I can't use ngrok, Enterprise has decided we can't use it for whatever reason, there are plans to move away from ngrok. Just at the moment, we have that dependency. So if you do face that issue, it'd be great to know that you have that issue for the beginning, so that we can move forward. And it's on our roadmap to move away from ngrok anyway. But the tab, you don't need ngrok. So let's go and create our tab. Okay, so we have created our project. And this has all been scaffolded. So nice, get a bit of a quick start of how you can get up and running quickly with this app. One of the things that I'm going to show you now is the way that the toolkit works with how you set things up. If you watched the session previously for the Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code, you kind of hit F5 and it does everything for you in the background. It's a bit more, I guess, developer driven in Visual Studio. So the actions are more kind of like preparation and then run. Just the one in this version wanted to give developers a lot more control over what was actually happening at different stages through that life cycle. So we have our project that's been scaffolded. I just want to quickly run through this. So if you are familiar with the screen, so we've got your www root folder, we've got an FX folder, we've got some components in there as well. We've got the interop folder, which contains the interop classes between C# and the Teams JavaScript SDK as well. We have our pages and our shared layouts, and also templates as well. The templates is where our manifest lives. So for Teams application, we need a manifest. So this is in here. This is our template. But it also, this project comes with templates for deploying to Azure as well. So you get Bicep templates right out of the box, so that when you come to provision, they're already there, which is great. And you can come in and inspect these and modify them however you like, add them in CI/CD pipelines that you might already have, or a great way of getting started. The files as well to take a look at is a permissions.json file. So with this application, when we actually start to run it, it's going to create a app registration for us. So we've got some settings in here where we can define what the permissions are, what the resources are for both delegate and application permissions as well. And I'll just nip back to, as we're talking about config, I'm going to nip back to the FX file as well, where we have lots of project level configurations. We've got some parameters for Azure. These are used by the Bicep templates. We've also got configs as well for local development and some project settings. If I look at the local configs, we can see here that we've got some placeholder values for the app name, and these are all reused within the manifest template. So you can add your own properties into here and then inject them into the templates, so that every time you go to launch your project or run it, in Microsoft Teams, that manifest is going to get updated with all of the values that are in these files. Really nice way of centralizing those properties. Okay, enough of going through the project structure now. Let's actually see how we can run this application. So Teams Toolkit has been added in as a menu item on the project. So I've right-clicked on the project, and we can see that we've got Teams Toolkit, and we can see and expand the options that are available to us. Alternatively, we can go to the project across the menu on the top as well, and we've got Teams Toolkit in there. So two different ways of accessing it. Generally, you're going to go through the right-click method. We've got a few options. So we've got prepare the Teams apps dependencies. So this is what you need to do before you actually do the F5 kind of launching of your application. This is where it's going to kind of do the initial setup, update the manifest, do things in Azure. And this is dependent on different types of projects that you've got. So for example, if this was a bot project, clicking that prepare Teams apps dependencies would also register my bot in the bot framework as well, which is really, really nice. A few other options, which I'm not really going to get into today, but we've got a nice shortcut to the manifest file. So like I showed you before, it was deep in the templates. If you don't want to find it manually, you can just come into the Teams Toolkit and click Open Manifest. And here we go. We've got our manifest file. You can see the placeholder values. So there's lots of configuration values that Teams Toolkit is handling for you in the background. We have our config, where our name is being injected in. So that was the config.local.json file. So these ones here will get added in. And you can see that it's actually got all the configuration for the tabs, the identity, domains, and web application info as well. So a lot of the initial groundwork has been covered for you here. But if you want to come in, change the developer name, you can either change it manually in the template, or you can create a configuration property as well and have that dynamic as well. So it's a nice feature that Teams Toolkit provides you, that ability to just create new properties and inject them into the manifest. Right, let's go back to Teams Toolkit and we'll do prepare Teams app dependencies. So one of the things that Toolkit wants to know is, where's your Microsoft 365 tenant? So this is using the Visual Studio account management features. So I've already linked my developer tenant account in here, but I can choose from different accounts if I need to add a new one. I can obviously go through the process here of adding a new account. If I hit continue, it's going to do the initial setup, and we get told what's happening in the output, so we can see that work has been done here with creating the application IDs as well, some internal kind of logs there. Basically, the manifest is being updated. Everything's been set up ready so that we can hit F5 and we can launch this tab into Teams. I'll just show you that if I go into the Azure portal, we can see that our community call app registration has been created, and we should be able to see in the permissions that user.read is there. So again, really nice, simple way of being able to get started very quickly from an identity point of view. Okay, everything is now ready to run. So let's hit F5 or click the debug button. This is now running, and it's going to have some authentication there, just to authenticate us with Microsoft Teams. And when we're into Teams, we have the side loading window, so we can see what values in our manifest are being shown into Teams. So we can see the descriptions and the permissions that it's got, different versions. Got the options to add it into different places in Teams, so either a specific team or a chat, or if I just click add, it will add it as a personal tab for me. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to click add. So we can see this is now running. We've also got some examples in here as well as for the code, where Teams Toolkit is providing us with helpers to get the user information of the current user. A few bits of information as well when you want to carry on to provision and deploy to the cloud and actually publish your app to Teams. Now I'm going to go back to Visual Studio and let's just take a quick look at the components in here. So we have a welcome component. So this is the component that is being displayed on that very first screen that we saw. And we can see in here where we have the interoperability with the Teams.js SDK v2. So we can call the isInTeams method just to make sure that, yes, we're running in Teams. And there are other helpers that are provided, but it's a nice way of being able to interact with JavaScript through C# and reuse a library that is already out there and a library that you can already use. And we've also then got the example line where we're using the get user info async method on the Teams user credential to pull back the user information of the current user as well. So again, a really nice way of how Teams Toolkit is providing you with a link to an SDK, definitely recommend that you check out the documentation for that SDK. There's tons of features in there, and it's getting updated all of the time. And again, another nice, easy way to be able to get the user information. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. And what
Gary,
we will do, because
I've queued up questions for you towards the end, so there's like 4 so far, but keep going.
Perfect. Yeah, as I've got a little bit of time, so what I can do is I can just go through and show you how the bots work as well. So I think that'd be quite useful. So I already have I should have a project already open, but it might just be easier to just start from scratch. So let's create a new project. Let's call it community call bots. And let's choose a timer on Azure Functions. Okay, so this is now scaffolded our notification bots using an Azure function behind the scenes. Fairly similar setup in terms of the project structure from Teams Toolkit perspective. So we've got our FX folder again, where all our configuration is held. And in our templates folder as well, we've got the Teams app package and also the Azure templates as well for the bicep files. So those are there, again, done for us really nicely. Still get the benefit of the placeholders as well. So just to quickly show you that it's exactly the same. Easily inject that config in there. Really nice feature. If we take a look at our notify timer trigger in here, we can see that it's an Azure function. It runs every 30 seconds. If you've developed Azure functions in the past, this should be very familiar to you. What this is doing is using a timer trigger that's going to run every 30 seconds. And what it's going to do is it's just going to send a message as an adaptive card into a location where that bot is installed. So we can install things in Teams in all sorts of different locations. They can be personal, they can be in the context of a team, they can be in context of a chat or a group chat. So there is an abstraction here that allows us to return where that bot is installed within Teams, and then we can iterate through the installations, and then we can create our adaptive card. We actually have a card in here. So we can see a standard adaptive card that has, again, placeholders in there, so we can inject data in there. And we're going to pass in these values and send an adaptive card to that installation. So again, really simple, that there's a method on the installation location just to send a card back, which again makes it really nice and simple. One thing I did mention, just to reiterate, so when I was talking through the different types of apps that you can create and the different templates, because this is a bot, there is the dependency on ngrok. So I have ngrok running in the background. Not going to show it because it'll have my IP address on there, but it's running in the background on port 5130, which Teams Toolkit is looking for. So one of the things that it does when we go to prepare Teams apps dependencies is going to check and see if ngrok is running. If it's not, it will throw you a message back to say, you need to have it running on this port to work. So let's prepare the Teams app dependencies. Let's pass that ngrok check, and again, it's asking me for the account that I want to use to connect to my Microsoft 365 tenant. So I'll hit continue on there. Again, it's doing some work in the background. It's created an Azure AD app as well, but it's also, in this scenario, it's registering a bot with the bot framework as well in the background, which is again, really nice. So that has now finished. So let me run this app. So again, we're just sideloading this app into Teams. Click Add. And then, give it a few seconds, a message will appear into this chat as an adaptive card. In a few seconds, there we go. So here is our adaptive card. So here are the values that we were injecting into that card, and we've got an action button there as well. So we can click that and just go to the adaptive cards designer page. One of the really cool things, and this is a new feature in Visual Studio 2022, is I definitely recommend that you turn on the hot reload and hot reload on file save. So if you want to come into here and make those changes, the bot's running in the background, it's going to be triggered every 30 seconds. It's going to pick up your new code as well. So then you don't have to stop and restart the debug process and go through those steps again. So that will really speed up your development time. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to turn that bot off because that's going to get annoying getting a message every 30 seconds. But let's go back to our browser. So where's the best place to get more information about this? Well, there's the TeamFX GitHub repository. If you go to this repository, you'll see that it's kind of a bit aligned to Visual Studio code. That's just the history at the moment, but there is Visual Studio content in there. There will be more added. But if you have any suggestions for new features, you run into any issues, here's a place where you can go and create a new issue. Create a new issue in the issues list, and the team will get back to you with some assistance. Alternatively, you can actually go through the help feature in Visual Studio as well. Use the report a problem or suggest a feature. The team are also triaging the messages that come through that way as well. And this way, actually, if you do have a bug, you get lots of telemetry that's sent for issues that you might have found with the tooling, so that can get to the team quicker. It might speed up as well the assistance that they can give you. So that's another new feature that you can use. On that, I think, hopefully you've seen enough today that will kind of get you interested, that you can actually start installing, have a play around, and be really interested to see what you build, what your thoughts are, if we can make things better, what you like, what you don't like, and let's work together on this one. And I say thank you for listening today, and hopefully we've got a few questions. Fabian.
Yep, I queued them up for you in a list right there. If you can see chat, or you want me to read them?
Perfect. Yeah, if you can read them, I'm trying to find my.
Yeah, no worries. So I think Victor answered the first one. Is it only tab or command bot as well? That's Yasser, right? As well, doesn't need it. Yasser, do you want to come off mute? Or did you get your answer to your question? If you're still here. No, I will come back to you. Paul's asking, are the capabilities in Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio the same as Visual Studio Code? I think you touched on that a little bit in the end, but you have a response for that one?
Yeah, so it's a great question, actually. And I was hoping someone would ask this. So, Paul, thank you very much. So, yeah, if you have an understanding of what Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code gives you, there's extra features in the Visual Studio Code version, such as API connections, SSO features as well. They're not in the Visual Studio version at the moment. It's primarily aimed at scaffolding and get it running. there isn't parity. That's not to say that they're not going to come later on, but there's a slightly different approach with the Visual Studio version. Based on feedback from the Visual Studio Code extension, there was a feeling that it was just doing too much and that it was abstracting so much away from you as a developer. It left you without as much control. So there's been a kind of a conscious thought of making sure that you're going through the steps as developer, and it's not, you know, hitting F5 and a magic wand is being thrown about and everything happening for you. So yeah, there's not parity just yet, but you know, if there's something in there that you think, I've seen this in Visual Studio Code and I'd really like it in Visual Studio, then you know, contact the team, get into the issues list, and you know, that will be able to get prioritized for you.
Thanks, Gary, for that. And I think somewhere there you answered, and it's in the demo. So when we go back and look at the recording, sir, you'll see how Gary started the installer, went back into into his tooling. I think it was under ASP.NET applications, and then light up the checkbox for Teams development. That's how you get it inside the installer. The other question, which is more of it's a consideration question, I guess. I wonder when to use Visual Studio Code vis-a-vis Visual Studio 2022 for Teams development. Any guidelines? I guess it's more preferential at best, but what are your thoughts around it? Do you get that question often, Gary?
So I know that, you know, there's a lot of, certainly for bots, there's a lot of samples already out there for .NET and C#. So, you know, I think leveraging the Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio will give you a bit of a leg up there, if you like, because there's the SDKs have been around for longer than the JavaScript SDKs have been around. But yeah, it's down to what your preferences are, right? I think and hearing feedback, a lot of people have been thinking, oh, I'm doing Teams development, I have to use JavaScript, or I have to use TypeScript, and I think that's been a real concern. That's not the case. You can use .NET, you can use anything. It's just, you know, it's a web app in the end of the day, or it's just code running in the cloud. Teams just needs to point to where your application is running. So you can use, you know, different technologies and mix and match. Or if you're comfortable, you know, .NET and C#, then definitely, you know, check out this new feature, and you'll be able to hopefully get up and running even quicker than having to maybe force yourself to learn a different technology just to build apps for Teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big proponent of that. I do not want to learn any more JavaScript than I need to be able to Google and Stack Overflow. So thank you for that. Coming up at the end, like 3 more minutes. You know, certainly we can grab stuff on chat in terms of the answer, keep the conversation there going, or inside the M365 community channel. But I wanted to first of all thank both Adriana and Liam for a great presentation today around the admin APIs on Microsoft Graph. Thank Gary Trinder as well in terms of talking to us about the Teams Toolkit development. Thank Brian Jackett for co-hosting with me here today. And of course, thank every one of you who showed up here today for this call. I know you have, you know, a lot of demands in terms of the time for your day. Thank you for at least spending it here. Sharing is caring, you know, contributing ideas, asking questions, giving us those feedback so that we can iterate through things. The recording will be available 24 hours on the M365 PnP YouTube channel. The link is there. Subscribe today if you have not subscribed. Follow us on Twitter on Microsoft 365 Dev and M365 PnP. The next call for the M365 platform call will be on September the 27th at 0800 Pacific, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you guys so much again for attending. Lovely call again as usual. Cheers, everyone.